Hello everybody, it's Andrew again, your average jeweler, and we're back with another big question, another one that I hear a lot, but cubic zirconia versus moissanite. And while we won't be talking specifically about diamond today, both of these are essentially simulating diamond in most scenarios, so the topic's going to come up. But really, what's better when it comes to different diamond simulants? And cubic zirconia and moissanite are two of the biggest options you'll find out there. So which is better for you? It should come as no surprise that diamonds are a big topic of interest when people start asking questions about jewelry. And subsequently, things that imitate diamonds become very big questions as well. Cubic zirconia, moissanite, they've been around a long time now, and they're different price points. They're both much less expensive than diamond. So on a daily basis, what are the things that will actually make you pay more for something like moissanite, or maybe save a little money and go with maybe the more well-known cubic zirconia? If cost weren't an issue, I think most of us would choose nice diamonds. After all, that is what these two are simulating, but they come surprisingly close in certain categories and not so close in others. As always, if you're coming back to my channel, thank you. If you're new here, consider subscribing. We do a lot of questions, we cover a lot of topics, and today we're trying to figure out this question with moissanite and cubic zirconia. Now, I've talked about cubic zirconia before in comparison to diamond, and you can definitely check out that video. There's a lot of good things in there that you can actually use in this particular argument as well. But moissanite adds a new element, and while moissanite was actually discovered naturally back in the late 1800s, it's incredibly rare in its natural form, much like cubic zirconia, and almost all the moissanite you're going to be able to buy is lab created. Same thing goes for cubic zirconia. So starting them off on equal footings, you should recognize right out of the gate, you're buying a synthetic, otherwise known as a lab-grown gemstone. If you're looking for something natural, certainly there are options. Clear sapphire comes to mind, but realistically, most of your natural clear stones are not going to come nearly as close to what we like about diamond as diamond. So if you want something natural, you should probably be considering how to get a good value out of a diamond. Again, there's a video on that. But moissanite has some very distinct differences from cubic zirconia. And maybe let's start with the one that's talked about the most. That is the hardness of moissanite. Moissanite gets touted as being one of the hardest, if not the hardest mineral after diamond in many situations. And while it's somewhat true, it is also a little bit misleading. It's not uncommon when you look at the Mohs hardness scale, which is what a lot of people use. They will show moissanite as a 9.5, right behind diamond at a 10, and right in front of the corundum family, which is ruby and sapphire, at a 9. So it puts it in a very unique place, and it makes it sound like an exceptionally hard stone. Well, it is, but there is something you should know and understand about how this grading works. The Mohs system of hardness is not an equidistant scientific scale. It's 10 different stones that were chosen for their specific hardness, 1 being the softest, 2 being harder, 3, and on we go. But not being an equidistant scale, going from apatite to quartz, you only have about a 25% increase in the hardness, where when you're going from quartz all the way up to corundum, you've multiplied by 4 times. It's exponentially more. And that much more so when you start getting up to those harder stones, the separation becomes drastically different, where 9 to 10, sapphire to diamond, is so much far apart, they're so separated from each other that there's not really a good comparison of hardness. So first of all, saying it's a 9.5 puts it in a very ambiguous territory, but even beyond that, a lot of places have started to more truthfully represent it as probably 9.25. They often say 9.5 because they just say it's in between diamond and sapphire, so it's a 9.5. Realistically, it's not as close to diamond as they want you to think. Doesn't mean it's a soft stone. It is harder than sapphire in a scratch-resistant sense, but it's not as hard as they'd like you to believe it to be. While we're talking about hardness, it's important to recognize hardness is not the same as durability. Durability is composed of several different things. You not only have the hardness of the stone, which is its resistance to scratching, but you have toughness, which is essentially resistance to breakage, and you also have stability, how it resists things like chemicals, and how it might resist just decomposition over time. So hardness, not the same as overall durability, and things like toughness and stability should be considered in when you're talking about a stone that's being worn in a ring. Many times a consideration for something like an engagement ring. So why am I talking about this? Because in recent years I've been a bit disappointed when I see a stone like moissanite come in for repair, and not only do most jewelers have to handle it with a bit more caution because how it handles heat from a jeweler's torch and other things do have to be a little more cautious. But the bigger thing is I see them come in rings and I'm not impressed with how they seem to be holding up, which is confusing, because I see a lot of sapphires come in and a lot of rubies that are technically a softer mineral, and very rarely do they show the same kind of wear. And this is partly for two reasons. One is that it's a clear stone, and being a clear stone, it is going to show things like scuffs and abrasions and any kind of damage a little more quickly, because one of the things you like about it is this brilliance and scintillation. And when a stone gets damaged like that, you lose those facet junctions, you lose some of the cut qualities that contribute to that, and the stone starts looking less pleasing for that reason. So the clear factor of the stone does play into why maybe it seems a little more noticeable. But even beyond that, what I've found from my own experience and some of my own research and study is that it does seem like moissanite can be a bit more brittle, in that if it is exposed to situations where it might sometimes be scratched if it were a softer mineral, it's actually chipping on a very small chemical level. At the crystalline structure, you actually have very small little chips taking place. And I think that this is maybe the bigger reason why I haven't been impressed with its overall durability. To be clear, it's not coming in totally trashed every single time, but I had one instance where a person brought it in after just a few years of wearing it as a ring, and I couldn't believe how much damage there was. There really was a substantial, noticeable amount of damage that detracted from the stone's beauty. Is it a deal breaker? Not necessarily. Do I believe it's tougher and not just harder than something like cubic zirconia? Yes, I do. I absolutely think it is a harder and more durable stone, but it's important to recognize when you start talking about it as a simulant for diamond, it maybe doesn't hold up quite to the marketing as it should. Now, I very briefly hit on the cut of the stone, and when we talked about cubic zirconia versus diamond, that's really a distinct difference. Most cubic zirconia is not hand cut, and it's not even hand finished. So the quality of the cut, while generally pleasing, is not to the same level of precision as that of diamond. Moissanite does a bit better. The comparison of cubic zirconia to moissanite, you have to get a very well-cut cubic zirconia to match how they cut a lot of moissanite. Again, the material is a bit more valuable, so more attention is put in to cutting something like moissanite. Being a harder material, there's just more labor involved because of that. But being more valuable, they do seem to put a bit more attention into the cut quality. I don't think you're going to get as honest a cut grading as you will with a diamond with a good lab report, but if you're comparing cubic zirconia to moissanite, you're more likely to get a better cut out of the moissanite, and you're going to get more of those diamond characteristics that you think of. You are going to get a better polish on the stone, and therefore you're going to see that light bouncing off a little bit more. You're going to get those refractive properties. You're going to see scintillation and fire. It's going to be more noticeable in moissanite than it is in cubic zirconia. So again, it does seem like moissanite has a bit of an edge there. So that brings us into color, which historically, color has been very problematic for moissanite. And when it first came out as a gemstone to put into jewelry, it was incredibly yellow, noticeably yellow, and really distractingly yellow. And this has changed, but not at keeping the cost down. So one thing that you want to watch out for when you're buying moissanite is that right out of the gate, you might be more likely to find a whiter stone in cubic zirconia, but you're also going to have options in moissanite that you need to pay attention to. And you can find very different grading systems. Because it's a lab-grown stone, oftentimes they're done as trademark or name brand, and they'll say it's supposed to match up with such and such a grade of diamond. Now take that with a grain of salt. People do tend to fudge things a little bit when it comes to marketing, and I don't actually believe that if they say it's a DEF on the diamond scale, that it's going to compare with something like a GIA diamond report in the DEF category, but it's probably going to be close, within a grade or two. And those are likely to be your white variety of moissanite. They are going to look good color-wise, but you do have to spend the extra money and get a nicer brand of moissanite to have that color eliminated, because there's still a lot of moissanite out there that has this very yellowish tinge to it, and maybe even a greenish tint at times. Yes, in talking about color, it's important to say it can be that same cloudy type of color that you can even get with things like cubic zirconia. It might not be as clear as it is white. And really what we want is more of a clear stone. So it may only show itself in very bright light. You get out in the sun, you get under very bright lights, and you can see these colors start to come out a bit more because of how it reacts with that light. But it's hard to say how noticeable that is going to be to the average person. You want to know about it though. You want to factor it in when you're thinking about this. Now you can get things like clarity characteristics in a moissanite. You can get things like inclusions, but generally speaking, this is not going to be a huge conversation topic between cubic zirconia and moissanite. They're both created relatively clean in that sense. Now, probably the most important thing to this conversation, the price. And the price of moissanite is obviously, from this video's description, less than that of diamond. It is a diamond simulant. It's an alternative to diamond, so it is therefore less expensive. How much less expensive? Well, not nearly as much as cubic zirconia. Cubic zirconia is, dollars to the carat almost. Very inexpensive to create, very inexpensive to produce, hence some of the corners cut on things like the cut of the stone. But moissanite, you're going to pay a bit more for it. If you're paying maybe, $4,000 to $8,000 for a natural diamond 1 carat, you're probably spending somewhere in the $1,500, maybe $2,000 ballpark for a nice quality moissanite. It might not be quite that much. You might get a bigger stone for that, but it's certainly not inexpensive in the grand scheme of things. And while I don't talk about diamonds for their resale value, diamonds will always have an intrinsic material value. Everything loses value when you initially buy it, but people are always going to like nice quality natural diamonds. Moissanite, however, it's gonna be a tough sell after the fact. You picked it out in your piece of jewelry, and hopefully it stays with you for your lifetime. But if it's at all a consideration, understand that it dramatically will lose value in a secondary market, because that's the type of stone people are just going to go out and pick what they want, choose something new, know that they're not getting anything damaged, know exactly what they're getting, have the guarantees. Diamond is a different topic altogether. We're not really going to get into that. I did want to hit on it. So which is better? Cubic zirconia or diamond? Would you spend the extra money on moissanite? Would you just go up to diamond at that point? I have a bias where I would probably do everything I could to even get a smaller stone and just get a natural diamond. That's where I come from. I have the privilege to see a lot of these things in action. I get to see a lot of diamonds in person. I do have the personal experience when I'm choosing a diamond to feel comfortable about it. But when you talk about these increments in price, cubic zirconia to something like moissanite, And then of course there is lab-grown diamond in there. We're not even going to try and touch on that today, but then you have natural diamond. And if we're talking about the true lab-grown simulants, the alternatives, not the synthetics, not the natural, is it worth spending that extra money and getting something that's a little bit closer? For a lot of people, I would say yes. I think it is a stone that will hold up better, and if you genuinely want something that's bigger and you can't or don't want to spend that extra money to get into a diamond, moissanite is likely going to hold up better over time. But you need to look at some things, you need to weigh out the pros and cons, and again, let me know what you're thinking. Are you a CZ all the way? Are you a moissanite when it's appropriate? Are you diamond every day of the week or diamond when it's appropriate? I'm curious to get some of your thoughts. Let me know below. If you have questions, I love to hear them. Maybe it'll be on the next video. Keep coming back. We're going to keep learning together.